Snow whipped through the dark forest, stinging every exposed inch of skin, but the soldier's canine refused to move. Its hackles were raised, eyes locked on something unseen, teeth bared in warning. The wind howled, carrying a distant cry for help, and every instinct screamed danger. What had the dog sensed in the blizzard that no human could see? Before the blizzard struck, life had a quiet rhythm that the soldier and his canine had long come to cherish. The soldier, a man of calm discipline beneath a rugged exterior, carried the weight of service in his eyes, yet at home he was softened by the presence of his loyal companion, a massive German shepherd with fur the color of storm clouds and a gaze that seemed to understand the deepest corners of his mind. Each morning, the dog would wait patiently by the door as the soldier laced his boots, tail wagging in gentle insistence, ears perked at every soft sound of the wind through the trees. Their walks through the snow-dusted fields were sacred rituals. The crunch of frozen grass underfoot, the sharp scent of pine needles and smoke from distant chimneys, the way the dog would bound ahead and then circle back, brushing against his leg as if to remind him that he was never truly alone. At night, the warmth of the cabin glowed against the cold, and the dog would settle close, head resting on the soldier's knee, a quiet sentinel in the flickering lamplight. In those moments, the world outside faded, leaving only the pulse of steady companionship. Yet in the days leading up to the storm, small anomalies began to disturb their routine. A low, insistent growl at shadows that didn't move, restless pacing at the edge of the treeline, a sudden, sharp alertness when the wind carried distant, faint cries. The soldier chalked it up to the dog's natural instincts, but each subtle warning gnawed at a primal corner of his mind, an unspoken dread that something unseen, something urgent, was approaching. The tranquility of their life, so carefully built, was about to be shattered in ways neither could have imagined, and the first hints of danger had already begun to creep in. The wind howled with a ferocity that seemed almost alive, tearing across the snow-laden forest and rattling the cabin walls like a harbinger of something terrible. The soldier had never seen the dog like this before, its ears rigid, eyes scanning every shadow, muscles coiled as if anticipating an invisible threat. At first he thought it was the storm itself unsettling his companion, but soon it became clear that the dog was responding to something deeper, something hidden beneath the white chaos. It refused to leave the doorway, growling low, a guttural warning that vibrated through the air, sharp and insistent, warning of a danger the human mind could not yet grasp. Every instinct in the soldier screamed that he should trust the dog, yet the rational part of his mind argued that it was only fear, the primal reaction of a creature trained to survive, reacting to wind, snow, and isolation. Hours passed in tense anticipation. Outside, the blizzard thickened, reducing the world to a swirling gray void, the kind of snowstorm that could erase the landscape and swallow life without a trace. The dog's restlessness grew. It paced near the windows, pressed its body against the soldier's legs, and barked sharply at sounds too faint for human ears. Faint cries carried on the wind teased at the edges of perception, and though the soldier strained to hear, he could discern only the intermittent eerie echo of what might have been voices, too far to locate, yet too urgent to ignore. Each bark and growl heightened the sense of impending peril. The dog circled the cabin repeatedly, nose to the ground, following patterns invisible to the soldier, stopping suddenly to stare into the storm with a silent, commanding intensity that felt almost supernatural. The storm showed no mercy. Snow accumulated in drifts taller than the fence posts, freezing windows and blanketing the forest floor in a uniform, suffocating white. The soldier attempted to maintain a sense of order, checking supplies, reinforcing doors and keeping the fire alive, but the dog refused to rest. Its sudden, sharp yelps punctuated the endless wind, each one slicing through the oppressive cold like a knife. Then came the first sign of true panic. The dog bolted from the cabin and skidded across the icy clearing, sliding back to the soldier only to bark toward a particular tree line, insisting, demanding attention. The soldier followed reluctantly, his boots crunching in the snow, his breath ragged, trying to see what had so alarmed his loyal companion. There was nothing but white, swirling snow, nothing but the skeletal silhouettes of frost-coated pines, yet the dog's growl deepened, resonating with urgency. Hours bled into one another as the storm raged, and the dog's behavior became more than protective, it was almost prescient. It refused to advance past certain spots, backtracking suddenly, hair bristling, growling at unseen forces beneath the snow. At one point, it froze mid-step, staring down a snowdrift with unwavering focus, teeth bared, body trembling with anticipation. The soldier knelt beside it, trying to soothe the animal to calm his own rising fear, but the dog pulled him forward with an almost magnetic insistence, guiding him toward a path that seemed to lead nowhere. Panic pressed against the edges of reason. The soldier could feel it. Something was wrong, something the blizzard was hiding, something that had been waiting for this moment. Every sound became amplified. The whistling of the wind through skeletal trees, the cracking of ice, the faint, desperate calls echoing across the storm-laden hills. The dog's ears twitched, its body rigid with tension, lunging and retreating as though sensing multiple threats at once. The soldier stumbled over frozen roots and rocks hidden beneath the snow, heart pounding, but the dog remained a tether to survival, dragging him, guiding him, insisting they move despite exhaustion and near-zero visibility. At times, the cries on the wind grew sharper, more human, urgent, fragmented. And each time, the dog's reaction intensified, circling, barking, even snapping at the air as though warding off invisible predators that threatened not just their lives but the lives of others, distant and unseen. By late afternoon, the storm reached a fever pitch, snow driven so horizontally that the forest seemed to vanish. The dog's behavior became frantic yet focused. It pawed at the snow, refusing to budge, growling sharply at some buried shape the soldier could not yet perceive. Then came a moment of pure terror. The dog emitted a high, piercing bark, ears flat against its skull, body trembling with raw tension. The soldier felt his pulse spike, adrenaline slicing through the exhaustion as the realization struck. Whatever the dog sensed was real and it was close. Heart hammering, he crouched beside the animal, following its gaze toward a massive drift partially obscuring the edge of a slope. For a fleeting instant, the snow shifted unnaturally, and a muffled, terrified cry pierced the storm. The soldier froze, every muscle screaming in alarm, every instinct screaming to obey the dog's silent command. Somewhere beneath that blinding white someone, something, was in desperate danger. The dog's eyes locked with his, unblinking, almost human in intensity, conveying urgency beyond words. It nudged forward, then pulled back, signaling caution, then motioned insistently toward a gap in the snow. Every second stretched unbearably as the blizzard's roar seemed to drown out the world, leaving only the dog, the soldier, and the fragile thread of life that hung in the frozen chaos. With one last, insistent bark, the dog froze, paw raised, ears erect, growl vibrating through its chest like a drumbeat warning of imminent peril. The soldier swallowed the rising panic, heart hammering, and realized that in this storm, in this impossible white wasteland, the dog had sensed something no human could. And then it struck, the unmistakable sound of collapsing snow, the crack of ice giving way beneath the weight of the storm. The dog lunged forward, barreling into the drift, disappearing from view for a heartbeat that stretched like eternity, leaving the soldier to follow blindly into the unknown. Every instinct screamed that danger was imminent, yet the dog, unwavering, led the way into the blizzard's heart. And as the soldier braced himself against the wind, he realized with chilling certainty that whatever they were about to uncover, it would change everything. A distant, muffled cry echoed again, closer this time, human, terrified, desperate. The dog's hackles remained raised, unwavering in focus as if challenging the storm itself. In that frozen, roaring wilderness, the line between survival and disaster had become impossibly thin, and the question hung in the air like icicles on a branch. Would the soldier trust the dog's instincts in time to save those trapped beneath the blinding fury of the blizzard, or would the storm claim them all before they could reach the truth? The blizzard reached a merciless crescendo, snow lashing in blinding sheets that turned the world into a swirling white void, every sound reduced to the roaring howl of the wind, yet the dog refused to relent, muscles coiled, eyes blazing with unyielding focus as if it alone could cut through the storm's fury. The soldier's boots sank into deep drifts, each step a battle against the frozen weight of ice and exhaustion, but he could not tear his gaze from the German shepherd whose instincts now seemed almost supernatural, guiding him through the chaos with a precision born of loyalty and unbreakable trust. Then, through the haze of white, a faint shape emerged, a heap partially buried beneath snow at the edge of a collapsed slope, and instinctively the soldier knew it was human, but before he could reach it, the dog bolted forward, sliding across the icy incline, claws raking against frozen earth, fur whipped by the wind, every movement a declaration of fearless determination, barking a high, urgent warning to the storm itself. The soldier struggled to keep pace, lungs burning, snow stinging his face as the dog's body became a living compass, sniffing, pawing, nudging at the buried form, refusing to leave a single inch of space untouched, its every action a prayer for survival. Suddenly the snow gave way beneath the soldier, plunging him into a hidden drift, and the dog froze, growl vibrating deep in its chest, eyes locking onto his with an intensity that told him to trust and follow, and with a burst of desperate energy, it circled back, nudging him toward the mound, barking as though to demand haste, urgency clawing at every second as the air grew colder, thinner, filled with the metallic scent of fear. Digging began, frantic, with paws and hands cutting through the frozen layers, each handful of snow revealing the small, terrified faces of a grandmother and her children, their breaths shallow, clothing frozen to skin, their cries choked by snow and panic, and the soldier's heart shattered in a mix of horror and relief, understanding fully that without the dog, they would have been lost to the storm's indifferent cruelty. The dog's growls turned to protective barks, positioning itself between the family and the encroaching drifts, nose to the wind, ears alert, as though daring the storm to challenge the lives it had sworn to defend, refusing to move even as the soldier carried the children to safer ground, strength waning, frostbite biting into fingers and toes, but the dog remained a constant, immovable force of courage, its loyalty absolute, a living barrier against the deadly white that threatened to consume them all. Then a sudden crack split the air as a massive slab of ice broke free from the upper slope, tumbling toward them with a roar that seemed to shake the forest itself, and without hesitation, the dog lunged, a blur of fur and determination, intercepting the sliding death, biting and pawing at the edge to deflect it just enough for the soldier to push the grandmother and children behind a frozen outcrop, snow and ice exploding around them, the sheer force of the storm pressing down every second. A heartbeat of terror. Time slowed as the dog held its ground, muscles straining, eyes fixed on the descending slab, teeth bared, growl echoing through the white void, a living embodiment of bravery, refusing to yield to the impossible weight of nature's wrath. And when the debris finally struck the frozen ground, the dog stood unbroken, shaking off the snow, coated in ice but alive, its victory silent but undeniable, a hero whose courage had carved a path to survival through the heart of the storm. The soldier collapsed beside the family, trembling, snow clinging to hair and clothing, chest heaving, eyes wide with awe and unspoken gratitude, realizing that the bond between human and dog had transcended ordinary loyalty, had become a force capable of defying death itself. And as the wind screamed around them, carrying away the last of the shattered snow, the soldier bent close to the German shepherd, pressing his forehead against its muzzle, feeling the steady heartbeat beneath the fur. And in that frozen, terrifying, miraculous moment, understood that love, loyalty and courage could manifest in the fiercest, most selfless way, that sometimes salvation wore four legs, a thick coat, and eyes that never wavered, and as the storm began to ease ever so slightly, leaving the world battered but intact, he whispered in his mind to the dog who had done the impossible, who had become more than companion, more than protector, who had faced the fury of nature and emerged unbroken. Without you we would all be gone. When the storm finally began to relent, the forest and fields were unrecognizable, transformed into a silent, glittering wasteland of snow and ice, each branch coated in frost, every path buried beneath a frozen, blinding white that had claimed hours, if not lives, during the night's merciless fury. The soldier, frostbitten and exhausted, gathered the grandmother and her children in trembling arms, each small body shaking with cold and fear, their eyes wide and uncomprehending, staring at the transformed world that had almost swallowed them whole. Yet even amid the chaos, he could not tear his gaze from the dog who had become the fulcrum of their survival, coated in ice, fur-matted, every muscle still taut with alertness, watching, guarding, refusing to relax until he could confirm they were truly safe. Slowly, inch by inch, they made their way back to the cabin, each step a battle through drifts taller than a man, the wind still biting but now hollow, echoing through the skeletal trees like a whisper of what had passed. Inside, the fire sputtered, barely surviving the night's chill, but it became a beacon of warmth and safety, and the soldier wrapped the children in blankets, pressing them to his chest, feeling the rapid flutter of fear leave their small bodies as the heat seeped into frozen fingers and toes. The grandmother, tears streaking her frost-stained cheeks, could only hold the soldier's arm, gripping it as if the warmth and strength of human contact could erase the terror they had endured, while the dog padded silently around them, nose nudging the blankets, ears twitching, eyes scanning for any remnant of threat, refusing to leave their side even as the adrenaline faded from its own veins. The aftermath of the blizzard was a quiet storm of relief and reflection. Injuries were minor, frostbite to fingertips, bruises from slipping on icy slopes, but the psychological scars ran deeper. The soldier sat with the grandmother and children, hands clasped, hearts racing, recounting the moments when the wind screamed and the snow threatened to crush them, each word a mixture of awe and gratitude, yet none of the words could truly capture the heroism of the dog whose instincts had rewritten the definition of courage. The children, initially trembling, began to relax under the gentle presence of the German shepherd, who lay down beside them, still vigilant but calmer, nudging their hands with a wet, cold nose, offering a reassurance that words could not, a tangible demonstration of loyalty that transcended language. The soldier knelt beside his companion, brushing the icy snow from its thick coat, his fingers trembling not from cold but from overwhelming relief and emotion, realizing that this dog, trained for war and obedience, had become a guardian of life itself, a bridge between terror and salvation, an extension of his own resolve made flesh and fur. In that cabin, small and battered against the lingering wind, an unspoken bond solidified, stronger than the storm that had raged outside, a bond of shared survival, trust, and understanding that would endure long after the ice melted and the snow receded. Outside, the sun began to pierce the lingering gray clouds, casting fractured beams across the frozen landscape, highlighting the destruction but also revealing the traces of life that had survived, the paths carved by desperate survival, the marks of paws and boots in the snow. The soldier surveyed the forest, chest still heaving, mind replaying every sharp bark, every frantic pawing, every split-second decision the dog had made in the heart of the storm, and he realized that this animal had not only saved strangers but had reaffirmed the very essence of heroism, selfless, instinctual, fearless. The grandmother, finally able to stand, held the children close, guiding them with careful steps through the deep snow toward the cabin's door, and each time they looked at the dog, wide-eyed with wonder and dawning comprehension, it met their gaze calmly, unwavering, a silent sentinel whose bravery had defied the storm. The soldier followed, his own pace slowed by fatigue but quickened by gratitude, understanding that the dog had done more than follow commands. It had made decisions in the face of incomprehensible danger, had taken calculated risks that no human might have conceived, and in doing so, had rewritten the course of fate for a family who had no idea they were seconds from disaster. As warmth returned to the cabin, the children began to giggle softly, the sound brittle at first, fragile as ice, yet it grew, buoyed by relief, by the realization of life preserved. The dog lay down between them, a living pillow of fur and heat, and the soldier traced his fingers through its thick coat, feeling the rough texture of fur still stiff with ice and the softness of loyalty beneath. The grandmother whispered her gratitude in broken, trembling words, hands stroking the dog's head, tears flowing freely now, a release of tension, terror, and awe. The soldier's eyes met hers, a quiet understanding passing between them. Life had been nearly lost, yet courage, instinct, and unwavering loyalty had carved a path to survival, and they owed it to a creature who had acted without hesitation, without thought of reward, and with a clarity of purpose that reminded them of the purest form of heroism. Outside, the blizzard had left a hushed, frozen silence, and in that silence, the soldier felt the weight of the night's events settle, a heavy, tangible reminder of mortality and the fragility of human life, but also of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, the bond that could turn fear into courage, helplessness into action, and the most desperate moments into stories of salvation. Recovery was slow, deliberate, marked by quiet moments of reflection. The soldier tended to minor injuries, the grandmother prepared simple meals, and the children, still wide-eyed, explored the aftermath under watchful eyes, learning that survival was fragile but possible. Yet through every step of healing, the dog remained central, guiding, guarding, providing warmth, and lending an unspoken assurance that they were not alone. Nights were spent near the fire, the family huddled together, the dog stretched at their feet, occasionally nudging a hand or head, reminding them that safety was not just physical but emotional, that trust and companionship could carry them through even the fiercest storms. The soldier, once solitary in the rhythm of his own life, now understood that heroism could be shared, that courage could manifest in fur and eyes, that the line between life and death could be bridged by loyalty and instinct, and that some bonds, once forged in the crucible of danger, were eternal. Weeks later, as the snow melted into rivulets of crystal-clear water and the forest began to breathe again, signs of life returning, the family found their rhythm, tempered by awe and gratitude, yet forever changed by the night of terror and rescue. The children would occasionally sit beside the dog, stroking its fur, whispering words of thanks and love they could barely articulate, while the soldier watched quietly, heart full, knowing that the lessons learned were not about survival alone but about the depth of trust, the courage inherent in loyalty, and the unspoken heroism that could dwell in a companion, in a creature who required nothing but devotion and returned it in immeasurable acts of bravery. The grandmother, her voice still shaky but strengthened by survival, often paused by the cabin window, looking out at the softened forest, tracing the paths where the storm had roared and the dog had led, eyes glistening with tears that were not just of fear but of reverence, of understanding that life, fragile and fleeting, could be preserved through courage, instinct, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. And in the quiet moments, when the storm was a memory and the snow had become water, the soldier and the dog would walk together again through the forest, retracing the paths that had once been fraught with peril, now peaceful yet forever marked by the events that had tested every ounce of courage within them. Each step reinforced their connection, each glance a reminder of nights spent in blinding white chaos, each paw and boot step echoing survival and loyalty. The children and grandmother would often join, laughter and warmth filling spaces that had once only known fear and white emptiness, yet even in joy they never forgot the sacrifice, the bravery and the quiet heroism that had saved them. The soldier knelt beside the German shepherd one morning, tracing fingers through its coat, voice soft with gratitude and awe, knowing that words could never fully capture the magnitude of what had been endured, what had been survived, and what had been given freely in the heart of the storm. In the end, the storm left scars on the land and on hearts, but it also left a story of unshakable courage, loyalty, and love, a testament that sometimes the most heroic acts come not from humans, but from the creatures who share our lives, who read our fears, act on our behalf, and guide us through darkness when our own instincts fail. The soldier looked into the dog's eyes, seeing not just the reflection of the night's terror, but the calm, unwavering strength that had carried them through, and he understood fully that the greatest heroes are not always clad in armor, but in fur, with hearts and instincts pure, capable of acts that inspire awe, gratitude, and reverence in every life they touch. And as the sun rose higher, illuminating the thawing forest, the soldier, the grandmother, the children, and the dog stood together, a family bound not by blood alone, but by survival, courage, and the enduring, unspoken promise that no matter the storm, no matter the danger, they would face it together. And in that bond, they discovered the truest definition of love, loyalty, and heroism, written not in words, but in acts of bravery that would echo forever in memory and in heart.